Hey everyone, welcome back to Be Not Afraid. Today my guest is Stacy Layne Adair, and she is a public school teacher, which I've been wanting to have this conversation for years with public school teachers, but I have found that the majority will either distrust because they've been taught to really by the union, or also say something in private, catch me in the grocery store, keep on going, keep doing what you're doing. But I had the privilege of going to DC and meeting a lot of teachers in June. And so I'm hopeful to get a lot of them on the show. And Stacy, thank you for being my first one. This is so awesome. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored to be your first teacher who's not afraid to speak out, since the name of your podcast is Be Not Afraid. That's perfect.
Right. And that's what I've been doing for the last several years, is just trying to catch parents or politicians or anybody who's willing to have the conversations that need to be had, because the first point in being conquered is censoring yourself, self-censorship. So tell me your story. I just want to hear it, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I've been a teacher. This is my 20th year. And until COVID, I pretty much kept my head down, just did my job and tried to stay out of the fray. With COVID, I became aware of what the teachers union was doing to keep schools closed, to think that they could advise the CDC on social distancing and masking, and all of that came out through FOIA requests. So that started my deep dive into the teachers union. Although when I was a young, in my 20s, college graduate, I had been to an event where this older couple had warned me about the teachers union. It's kind of funny looking back on it, because I wouldn't become a teacher for about, 15 more years. But they were warning me. I remember thinking, why are they telling me that? But it stayed in my head. And so when I became a teacher 20 years ago, and my school district was fully unionized and had 4 hours to inundate new teachers with scare tactics, I remembered not to join the teachers union. And so I didn't. 20 years ago, I didn't. So I will proudly say that I never gave the National Education Association even one penny of my hard-earned money. And I'm proud to say that, especially now that I've done the deep dive and see what they've done to public education, what they've done to the students, and honestly, what they're doing to our country.
Right. And I'm excited to dig into those things. Can you tell me, so have you been to a teachers union meeting, or have you been pressured? Have people said, why haven't you joined?
Yes, when I first started teaching, I had a really strong union building rep who came and talked to me on a regular basis. Since then, not so much. And then recently, they pretty much know where I stand, because I go to school board meetings and speak against them. So the union reps that I've come up, to meet in the last 5 years haven't asked me to join anything.
How, uh, what kind of tactics do they use? Because I've seen a mass influx, or a mass outflux, I guess, of people leaving the teachers union. And I know that I've also heard teachers who've said, what are we supposed to do? This is the best insurance. This is the best way. One friend of mine has said, who's going to be there at 3 o'clock when we have an accusation made against us? How do you navigate that without union representation?
So I have representation through an organization called American Association of Educators. And prior to 2020, I just never even worried. I didn't worry. I was like, well, you're not going to scare me. Like, why are you going to try and scare me? If I just do my job, why would I be afraid? I knew I was going to push back when 2020 happened. And so I joined the American Association of Educators. And I have legal representation. I have advice through that organization. If I have a problem ahead of time, I can, open a case and ask for advice. So, and they will be there for you. That's one thing. I didn't even know about that organization before, 2020, but it's been around for 30 years. So teachers have
Wow.
options. Teachers have options. And you were at the, Teacher Freedom Alliance, the Teacher Summit, and teachers who join and get accepted into the newly formed Teacher Freedom Alliance will get free liability insurance once they're accepted. So there's that. Now there's, a new option. So there are several options for teachers. They don't have to rely on the union. But one of your other questions was, what do they do? Well, I have a young teacher friend who became a teacher 5 years ago, and they forged her name on the form.
Wow.
So, young teacher didn't necessarily pay attention to her payroll, her paycheck to see what deductions were being taken. And when we finally helped her look into it, yeah, they had been deducting their $90 a month. And, she
That's a
hadn't
lot.
signed.
That's a lot, especially if you're a young teacher.
She has not
That's a
signed
week of
the
no.
form.
Okay.
But my school district just ended its agreement with the teachers union. It expired, and they chose not to, sign up for it again. And so this was the first year at new teacher orientation that the teachers union didn't get 2 to 4 hours to scare teachers. And prior to this year, the master agreement ended on June 30th. It expired, and they didn't re-sign it. The board didn't re-sign it. Prior to this year, the teachers union had negotiated that they got 2 to 4 hours with all the new teachers in a district room to scare them into joining an outside organization. And that's how I look at the NEA, is it's an outside organization. So they
Do you
were
want to
getting
expand on that?
free
Yeah.
use. They
Go
were
ahead.
getting free use of our buildings, free use of the buildings, free use of the taxpayer, computer, taxpayer teacher time when teachers were, on being paid by the district, and they were talking about these issues. The district up until now had even paid part of the union president's salary. So taxpayer dollars have been paying part of the union president's salary.
That's insane. Um, so the union president, I'd love to talk about them because I don't understand how anyone could listen to them. I guess a lot of people don't, but can listen to them and consider themselves in any way to be even a moderate and be okay with the rhetoric that they say. So, what are your feelings about Randy Weingarten or Becky Pringle?
I think most everyday teachers who are members of the teachers union don't even know who those people are. So one of my goals is to make them famous, is to share the craziness that they're saying and doing as many places as possible. That's why I appreciate what you're doing too. And Corey DeAngelis, like, let's make these people famous or infamous as it would be, but let's show the teachers, the common everyday teacher who pays their dues and doesn't pay attention even to what they're doing locally.
Right.
Let's make them well known so teachers can be more educated and decide, maybe I don't want to put money towards these nut jobs.
And I think that that's the perfect term for them, nut jobs, because when you watch them, because you can watch their speeches for anybody who's following, you can Google them and or watch search them up on YouTube, and you can watch their speeches. They're extremely performative. They're oftentimes screaming and saying, oh, they're theater kids, and somehow they're leading educators. So you said you think most of them don't watch, but how many do you think go to the conferences?
Very few. I mean, the everyday teacher it's kind of like car insurance. You pay for it and you don't think about it again. You don't even go, most people don't even get, a comparison to get a better deal. They've paid for it. They feel good. They don't have to think about it again. And that's probably how most union teachers are. They just are paying for their insurance to make them feel good so they don't have to worry. And now they're just going to go on and live their lives. And they just, they don't know what's happening.
And then at the Teacher Freedom Alliance, I believe that the amount of money that they are going to give those who are approved is more than what a teachers union can provide. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it'll be double. I believe that the local union is $1 million in liability insurance, and the TFA liability insurance will be $2 million in liability insurance.
And are you scared? Have you been harassed about being a teacher that speaks up?
Okay, well, there's a couple of parts of that question. Am I scared? I have been scared. And when I get scared, I just give myself a pep talk. Well, you've come this far. You're going to be scared now. And then the other thing is, yes, I have been harassed. And 2 years ago, when door knocking for our conservative candidates, and really, you don't even have to call them conservative, you could just call them common sense. But our good parent first school board candidates, when I was door knocking, the rear window, side window, one of those small windows of my car got broken. And I'm 95% sure it was a union person who had driven past me a little earlier in the afternoon. I also spoke up against the teachers union at a school board meeting. I had a school board speech that I gave last year. And at my school email, I received a veiled, vaguely threatening email from a local retired plumber. So the way the union plays the game is they get all the other union members in your city and neighboring cities to help them. So when you see like a bunch of teachers outside a school board building or meeting, those are not likely all teachers. Some of those are sympathetic union members from the area. And so I don't know how this person found or, even watched a school board meeting, but I had to let the district know, and they connected me with the police. The police filed a case, or I don't know, filed something. And then they had looked into the gentleman and said, he's not a threat. He doesn't have a record. You're probably safe.
Probably.
So, yeah, right. I mean, but that's what it is. You're dealing with union.
Right.
Union bullies.
We have that situation going on. I'm in Utah, and one of the things that are going on is that a lot of people recognize that teachers unions are absolutely pushing activism. We've got the UEA magazine, or maybe it's the NEA magazine from last year, and it said we're building this hub for activism. And so people are saying, I don't want to fund teachers unions. I've been to the Capitol and I've seen the mental health issues. Honestly, the behavior is behavior that when I see that, I go, why would anyone send their kids to places with these? It can get violent. It's definitely abusive and like verbally abusive. And the temperament is kind of crazy, but what they do, they pull in the police and they pull in the fire. And we don't even have an actual union in Utah. We have teachers associations, but they're the same thing. So if you go to the NEA webpage and you type in affiliates and you type in your state, you will find an teachers association, which is the same thing as a teachers union. What exactly, if there is any difference. Do you know?
There isn't a difference. Everyone that ends with EA, Education Association, pays dues to your state EA and then NEA. So I have here that for Colorado, the teachers pay a little over $1,000 a year for their membership, $90 a month. 424 of that stays local. 481 of that goes to the Colorado Education Association, and 219 of that goes to the National Education Association. So it's kind of like your mom and your grandma. That's how I explain these organizations. Is they're all related. They're just, they're just the higher levels of those organizations. And whether you want to or not, your money is sent to those organizations.
Right. And that's the crazy thing, is that there are teachers who definitely have values, and they say, I don't want anything to do with that, but I want the insurance, I want the protection. And I would be concerned, like, just again, having you speak after like years of trying to say, teachers, come on and talk to me. That people will, even though my channel is very small, but there are people who will look you down, or look you up and just kind of go, she's our target. She's who we don't want to teach our kids. And, they will lie. That's a fact. They will lie, and they will harass, and they have a lot of power. In fact, go ahead.
My thought from this regarding that has been, as teachers, we teach students to stand up to bullies. So how can I not stand up to bullies when I teach students to stand up to bullies? I cannot do that. I can't just say one thing and do another. I feel like I'm a role model as a teacher, and I just couldn't look myself in the mirror and not stand up to bullies. That's really what motivates me to push past that little moment of fear, to push past wanting to be well liked. I'm not popular, and that's what pushes me. Is I'm not going to say one thing and then do another. I'm sure I'm a hypocrite in some areas of my life that I can't see, but for that one, no, I refuse to be a hypocrite in that area.
When you say you're not popular, how about with your students?
Oh, I mean, the students, I love the students. I want them to have a better life. Education is about providing people the knowledge so that they can go where they want to go and have success in whatever area they decide to go into. And so I teach elementary school. I teach small groups all day. English is a second language. I don't take, surveys on whether my students like me or not. But I do believe that they know that I care about them and their best interests in the future.
Wonderful. I do want to switch and talk about what's going on in our schools, because that's something that people oftentimes don't believe. So you've been teaching for 20 years. When did you feel a change from what we might call traditional teaching that most parents think is happening in school, versus the switch? And I'll let you explain what you've seen that's switch change.
Well, honestly, like I said before, I didn't really start paying attention until COVID, because I had a really great principal for a lot of those years. I had, a common sense principal who gave consequences, and I think he protected us from a lot of the nonsense, that we see. And so I guess I just really became aware of it with COVID. And then, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And the state Department of Education has LGBT civics lessons for, starting in kindergarten and first grade on the website. We have Colorado. Well,
Can you stop for just a moment there and explain to me what an LGBTQ lesson for kindergarten and first grade would be?
It's storybooks about trans and gay people and what they did. And I made different screenshots of it. I went on there, spent like a day looking at it and compiling things and making my own little screenshots. And most people don't even know that this is happening, and I really just encourage parents to stand up for their kids and to stand up in public education. I have always believed, even before I was a teacher, that, parents pay taxes. The schools belong to you. It's public property. The teachers work for you. And I have just been encouraging parents to speak up. Like, if you don't like something, speak up. And, and there's always going to be those parents who don't like anything you do, and for Johnny and helicopter parents and lawnmower parents. That's not who I'm talking to. I am talking to the parents who don't know that children belong to the parents. Children do not belong to the government. Children do not belong to the school system. Children do not belong to the teacher. These are not our kids. These are your kids. This is my student. This child does not belong to me. I'm a Christian, but I have never tried to proselytize my students into my faith, because I respect the role of the parent and the role of the family. Even if I don't agree with the way a parent is doing something, they are the parent. And I don't try and push my values on any students, but I am ready. I have been waiting since 2020 for parents to find their voice and speak up and protect their children. I was appalled that people would let their children wear masks while running up and down the basketball court. I'm no doctor, but I'm sorry, that doesn't look healthy to me. And, parents, these are your children. They're not my children. Don't let any teacher tell you any other way than what you think is what's best for your children. And even if you're wrong, you have the right to be wrong.
I think part of the problem, because as a parent, and so I'm a parent and I teach in the homeschool world. I have over 100 students. And so I understand helicopter parents and all of that. But I think that part of the problem is that parents are literally being lied to. They will say, none of that's in our school.
Yes.
Especially things like social and emotional learning. Oh, we're not doing it the same way that other people are doing it. And I'm sorry. Yeah, my mouth formed it. It's kind of BS, because if you have schools that say inclusive, we support inclusive policies, you are supporting LGBTQIA agenda, which means that the books, if you're reading about historical figures, you're probably reading about Harvey Milk. I know that there's a child's book about Harvey Milk. And they will tell you first that it's not there. Or another thing that we get told, which is why parents back down. I think we have to be fair. And trust me, I have my own frustrations with parents not standing up. But part of the problem is teachers are literally responding saying, we are the experts.
Yes.
Where does that come from? I've never heard, before 2020, when it was, only let the essential workers work, I've never heard of teachers not valuing the parents' opinion. What's going on there?
A lot of that rhetoric comes from the teachers union. I've noticed, we are the experts, and it really is a way to, in my opinion, to prop up the teachers and build up the teachers. And honestly, I don't need to be a hero. I'm just going to go do my job. I do my job because I like it. If I didn't like it, I would go get another job. And a lot of that kind of just insidious rhetoric you hear comes from the teachers union, and they're basically trying to brainwash the teachers. And what part of that is that we're the experts because we have a license. And then they look down on anybody who doesn't have a teaching license. And that's one of the things they use against charter schools and homeschools. Oh, you don't have a teacher license, and
Right.
what is a license? You know what I mean? Like, why does that make you better than someone else? I know plenty of teachers with a teacher license who aren't that good. Okay. And so that all comes, the licensing companies, the testing companies, as you were talking about earlier, a lot of them are started by the NEA and the teachers union. And so they are NEA adjacent, and they're just all preaching the same rhetoric, to the teachers to make them feel better than everybody else. I don't know.
Well, I do know a little bit because I do a lot of work with people who are exposing things like accreditation. And accreditation, one of the main proponents in order to be accredited as an institution that's teaching teachers is that you must adopt DEI policies, regardless of what you call them. You have to adopt these, and you can't graduate without embracing them. So there are people, you'll see it, a lot of seniors will wear, I went to college without being indoctrinated, but they have to work hard at not being, and they have to be aware that that can happen. And so I think that there are teachers who are in that same boat. There are teachers who, just the other day I had a teacher who posted on my social media, and this is a friend, an acquaintance at least, and they said, my husband and I are tired of being harassed by parents. Most of us are good teachers. I don't disagree that most teachers, at least from my experience, most teachers are good teachers. Most teachers don't want to teach what I would call garbage, DEI, division, exclusion, and ideology. However, they are bound by compelled speech. I think it was Daniel Buck that we heard in one of our lessons. And when he was talking, he said, teachers have to teach what's put in front of them. They do not have free speech on that. How can a teacher navigate that? Or can they?
Tell me that quote again from Daniel Buck.
Teachers have to teach what's put in front of them. They do not have free speech. Their speech is somewhat compelled. It's owned speech.
I'm not going to do anything that I don't agree with or believe in. So, sue me, fire me. Really, it's just most teachers, most Christian and conservative teachers, they're just going to jump over that line, or they're going to allow themselves to be brainwashed by it. But during this whole time period over 5 years, I just decided, kind of in my own mind, and it's not accurate, but I decided I work for the student. I'm going to do what's best for the student. If I need to teach the student how to read or some vowel teams, OA, AI, AY, so that they can learn to read, I'm going to do that. And if the district decides that I'm not the teacher for them, okay. But as long as I am where I'm at, I'm going to do what's right. And that's my perspective. Again, if teachers can get other jobs, we're not slaves. Some of the teachers union rhetoric is, they're going to take away our lunchtime, and they're going to, well, you're not a slave. If the job gets really bad, you can go get another job. Like, you're not stuck in a bad profession if that's how you view it, you know. And for me, I've just decided I'm going to stay as long as I can to fight for what's right, not to keep my head down, not to tell people what they want to think, but to do the right thing. And that's just how I can sleep at night. I can't tell other people what to do, but that's what I've decided to do.
And that's why it's really frustrating when people say that parental rights advocates like me are against teachers. We actually want you to stay. We want you to stay in the classroom. We want to know that our kids have some places that are safe. And I appreciate that you don't impose your religion. My students don't know my religious beliefs, because it's important that they come and education helps them form their own mind.
And
So
their parents are the
their parents,
ones
yeah,
who
huge,
should be giving them that type of information. And
right. But in the Cultural Revolution, when I made the thumbnail, I used your shirt that says anti-communist. In a cultural revolution, parents are completely devalued. That has
yes,
to happen, and that is what's happening. Parents don't get to know. I was part of a group, and I said, I think that transparency, a single email going out and telling teachers or telling parents once a week what you're doing, what books you're reading, just a single thing. And I was blocked immediately and told, you're not the right kind of person for this group.
well,
And
I want to say
yeah,
that when people, jump on the bandwagon to criticize teachers, I'm not offended. I'm like, good. I'm glad you're paying attention. Why would I feel guilty about something I'm not guilty of? Like, you're not hurting my feelings. I will give you a high five and say, good job. Where have you been? I've been waiting for you. And
right.
so a good, strong teacher with values and not union brainwashed isn't going to be offended by parents paying attention to what their children are learning. I am trying to encourage people to do that by telling them they're your kids. Like, if not you, then who? And then I want to show my shirt that I have today. I had a friend of mine make it because, as school board elections come up, the union's known for saying, teachers support these candidates. And it's like, no, that's not my teachers union. You're using my name by saying teachers support these candidates, and I do not support these far leftist candidates. And I just want this hashtag, like, I want everybody to use it. Like, I'm not like, this is my idea. No, I would like every good teacher to say, it's not my teachers union. We need teachers to start speaking up and saying, you're not my union. You don't represent me. Stop saying that you do. Because in my district, the people paying attention are very few far left radicals that run the union. And honestly, the regular teachers in it don't even pay attention to what these people are saying. They're not even aware. And my friends and I went to the launch for the local union candidates. We just walked right on in. And it was very interesting when we listened to their speeches. They sounded so, everyday normal.
Right.
They weren't talking about their radical ideologies. They weren't talking that one guy had gotten arrested during a Black Lives Matter protest in 2020. They weren't really. So I got to see by attending that even the people who are going to support them and door knock for them don't even really understand who their own candidates are.
Well, Red for Ed in itself is a socialist. It was designed by a teacher that was a socialist. So when you're promoting Red for Ed, you are promoting the socialist ideology. That's simply a fact. And you can read it in, I can't think of the book right now, but I will put it in the comments. But Red for Ed is absolutely a socialist movement. And when you listen to Randy Weingarten, you should listen to her. She just wrote a book called Why Fascists Hate Teachers. The issue that I have with that is that fascism, which is the government and companies working together to control things. So, but part of what happens oftentimes when fascists truly take over is they limit what you can listen to. They provide censorship, and they fully take over the schools and change what people are learning. So, one of the things that I tell people is that BLM didn't really leave. BLM came into our schools through things like digital media literacy. I don't know if you know anything about that. Do you? So you,
Yes.
okay. What do you know about it? Because I don't want to put words into your mouth. So you tell me what you know about digital media literacy as a teacher.
I just remember I go to every school board meeting now. Since we've gotten good, well, even before we got good people elected. And I remember it's the union talking about, everybody needs digital media literacy. And if they're talking about it, that it's probably far left. And everything they bring forth is just another way to brainwash the students, but not just the students. If you look in history, totalitarian regimes always use the teachers. And that's another reason that I cannot be quiet. I will not participate in whatever's coming, even if it comes and we lose. I'm not going to look back and say I participated in it in any way, shape, or form. And if it just means speaking up and people don't like me and a few people threaten me, okay, you know what? Like, I'm looking at how I'm going to feel about my own actions in the future.
Right. Um, so digital media literacy, you're right. It is far left. And what happened was in 2016, after Donald Trump won the presidency, a bunch of companies decided that a huge reason they won was because of what the internet was saying. So they decided to start teaching our children who was correct to listen to and who was not. So um, people like Tim Pool are considered far right, and CNN and NPR are considered trusted voices. So, and this is something that kids have to do in order to graduate. So they are being taught to
Wow.
only listen, to only provide sources, all of these things based on a leftist narrative, a progressive narrative. So this is just one way that our children are being absolutely conditioned in schools. And it's all over the place. Last year at Christmas, I saw a teacher who was extremely, I don't know how she's a teacher, honestly. But I saw a teacher who was just like, digital media literacy. I love it. It's the best thing ever. And people are promoting, promoting, promoting. And what they're saying is it's going to stop your kids from exiting the world um, because they're watching too much negative stuff. Well, I'm sorry, but when we have a constant diet of the most negative books, I'm not even talking about inappropriate materials, but I'm talking about things that are just constantly feeding them. You should be depressed. America's a terrible place.
Yeah.
Um, when we're constantly doing that to our kids, and then we're wondering why they have bad mental health. Well, there's proven books that are great by age to help children thrive, and we're choosing the opposite so that everything is depressing. It's story after story after story that's depressing. And then we're calling being able to read that and make it through it resilience. But they're too young to kind of add that stuff to their backpack, as like Corey Ten Boom would say. So digital media literacy, I highly recommend looking it up. You can look it up on Courage is a Habit. I also just met Mike Ben, and he's doing a lot of work to expose it, and it needs to be exposed. But the groups that did it were like CIA. Literally, the CIA decided that digital media literacy was something that all of our kids needed to understand. So you said you teach English as a second language.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'm interested to know if you're pushed to teach any kind of a victim narrative to these newcomer, probably children, or if you get to use whatever you want to for curriculum.
The victim narrative isn't in the curriculum per se. We did just adopt a more classical education reading curriculum that will have a language component in it. And so I'm hopeful and positive about that. Where I see the victimhood narrative coming in is through discipline, not policies, because I have a friend, you may have met her, you might have even gone to her presentation, Katie White, who teaches like our district policies are good, but they're not always implemented. So everybody knows, you send a kid to the principal and they come back with, a bag of chips and a sticker, even if they've been violent, even if they've threatened. And so that's where I see the victim narrative. You didn't misbehave because you chose to, you misbehaved because you have a hard life at home, and I mean, okay, I had a hard home life too when I was growing up. Thank God that my liberal teachers back then weren't, teaching me this victim narrative.
Right.
They just taught me school and how to overcome, and they didn't give me any extra sympathy, and I didn't have SEL. I did go and talk to the counselors once, and but all of this toxic empathy is what worries me for our future students. And the young teachers don't know, oh, send that kid to the counselor if they're sad. No, don't send them to the counselor if they're sad. I mean, send them to the counselor if they come to school with choke marks around their neck. Okay, then you send them to the counselor. Send them to the counselor if they're sad. No, get them involved in something that's going to make their life better and make them feel better about themselves. Teach them how to read and write and whatever else you're supposed to be teaching them. And then they will feel good about themselves as they accomplish something. And that's the main problem I see. And it's just so discouraging to watch. And that's why I'm so thankful for Teacher Freedom Alliance, that we can start getting like the younger teachers into a group that talks common sense, that offers common sense professional development.
Right.
Daniel Block, Max Eden, these people who have done research and know what actually is happening in schools. And, my hope is that the TFA can support and encourage young teachers to speak up sooner than I did. I remember sitting in meetings the first 15 years and just thinking, I'm not going to say anything. I'll just keep quiet.
Why?
And, why? I mean,
but why did you feel that you weren't going to say anything?
I'm not going to cause trouble. I'm not going to be a troublemaker, and since then I've learned if you speak up, there's probably other people thinking the same thing. And so that's another reason to speak up. And
courage is contagious, right? Courage is contagious. If you do something and you give other people the power to do it too. Oh, they did it and they're still here. Oh, they did it and they still have friends. Those things that matters. People need to see it because cowardice and fear are destroying our schools.
Well, and we took our local teachers group. It's not like official or anything, but we took about 5 younger teachers to the teacher summit where you were. And I mean, that's the encouraging thing, is like, let's keep spreading the word among these younger teachers so they can find their courage sooner than I did. And so they can learn that, you know, common sense education makes more sense than what you're being told to do. And it's okay. Like, you can do the right thing. And now you're going to have the backing of a big organization, TFA, Teacher Freedom Alliance. And so you're not going to be standing alone. And I know that like teachers like to feel like they're part of something. And so maybe they feel like they're part of something through the NEA, but the Teacher Freedom Alliance will give them an opportunity to feel a part of something that's more common sense. And I'm just really excited
better for
about
your
that.
mental health. It's better for your mental health. I remember there's two things that I want to hit on. One, when you said that they're coming back to the classroom with chips and they're coming back and they're not being disciplined, instead people are having empathy for them. That is called restorative justice. And what happens if a kid gets to come back to the classroom with chips and a sticker? Other kids are going to look at that and go, I want that. Oh,
Exactly.
if I act up, I can go to the office too. I can get a treat too. Or they're going to look at that kid and be super resentful. They're going, excuse me, they're going to be, they might not, they may bully them. So that's restorative justice. Max Eden is the author of a book called Why Meadow Died. It explains policy so thoroughly. And I highly recommend getting that book. Then the other thing that I want to talk about, because a lot of people think social and emotional learning means that we're just talking about people's big feelings, making sure that they feel well enough to learn. What are your feelings on social and emotional learning?
There's too much focus on how you feel. And again, it's toxic empathy. It's all about how everybody feels all the time. And, you know, you may just be grumpy and you came to school, and what do you need? Do you need to wallow in how you feel, or do you just need to think about something else? Like turn your mind from your pity party. We all have pity parties. Turn your mind from your pity party to, oh, you know, this is what I'm learning today. And so social emotional learning, there's just too much of a focus on it. Honestly, even if it's a good program, like we have a good program in my district for elementary school, but now it's 20 minutes a day. So the kids can't read or write, but we're spending 20 minutes a day on it, on SEL. And, you know, the main problem to me is just teaching kids to wallow in their feelings. And it's interesting because one of the things they do for autistic kids is, you know, if a kid's, maybe an autistic kid will ruminate over a certain thing, right? And so they'll say to the child, okay, how long do you want to ruminate over that? Do you want to ruminate over it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes? And then the child gets to decide, you know, and then you set the timer. And at the end of whatever time they chose, now it's time to move on. But we're actually, even though that's something they do in education, the great special ed teachers who are amazing, because I couldn't do it, but I've heard them do that with students, and it's a great technique, but that's not what we're doing in the classroom. Oh, you're sad. Oh, you need your pass to go talk to the counselor. You know, how many of the super smart kids figure that out quickly, how to get out? You know, and that's the other thing we see is how, you know, all these well-intended ideas and the unintended consequences of all these well-intended big-hearted people. You know, it's like the unintended consequences are harmful, but you think that you did a good thing. You know, you sent that kid to the counselor, you know, and it's like, no, you know, now you've taught them either to wallow in their problems. And I'm not saying if a kid's been abused, that's the time to send them to the counselor. I'm not saying don't do that, but if a kid is sad and you're sending them to the counselor, now you're teaching them to wallow in that sadness. If a kid is just smart and figures out, you're not going to be able to tell that kid, if your school's policy is that everybody goes to the counselor when they need to, you're not going to be able to tell that kid who's manipulative and figured it out that they can't go. So it's part of the bigger problem, honestly. I mean, there's so many problems. I think it's just important to say something, even if it's just one sentence. And actually at the conference, I was on a panel, and Matthew, that was from the foundation, he created a list of responses to use when you come up against this kind of stuff, just like one sentence responses. And I mean, that's good, because you can't always think of what to say when this kind of stuff comes up, and you just feel like you're Scrooge or something because everybody else seems to agree, but how dare you not agree? And I'm not saying I say something in every single opportunity. I don't, but
Right.
if I can't be quiet, then I'm going to go ahead and say something.
I love the way that you put it, because when I think of SEL, I think of the far more nefarious parts of it, the parts that that socially conditioned children to believe that only this kind of behavior is quote unquote kind, and that behavior generally is affirming, regardless of whether or not something is true. And so those are the kind of things that I think about. But as a teacher, and which that man in the arena who's sitting there dealing with it, I think that just the simpleness of, how are you teaching resilience when you're telling kids to have somebody else fix your problems? Oh, and by the way, fixing your problems is junk food. Like, this is worst policy. When I've taught in charter schools, the kids will start saying about 20 minutes before lunchtime, I'm hungry. I can't make it any further. It's going to be so long. And I'll say, let's look at the clock, and we'll count up, and I'll say, you can do this. It's going to be hard, but you can make it if you focus on your work. If maybe you get a little bit ahead, as a reward, we'll get to play music as you guys are walking to lunch. You get to choose the song, whatever I can do to teach them that they can make it through something hard. That's actual resilience. Telling a person that as soon as your feelings catch you up, that it needs to be dealt with immediately. That's instant gratification, and that actually does not build resilience. But I love that it's that simple. As a teacher, that's the frustration, because someone like me who's really, the hamster wheel of going through all of these things, what's at the root of it all, is different than a teacher, because the teacher is generally exhausted at the end of the day. You're not a stay-at-home parent or a lawyer or an investigator who has the time to go through the darker parts of this.
Well, the interesting thing is, in 2019, I think our school got money to hire a counselor, and I thought it was a great idea. I was excited about it. I envisioned the counselor having small groups with kids who couldn't get along with others, with kids whose parents had died in the military, with kids who's, just had severe, problems.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I envisioned it. That's how I thought of it in my mind. And so I was excited because I work in a Title I school, and it's a high need school. And so I was just as excited and thought it was a great thing. Then after a few years of having it, I started noticing, it was becoming a crutch rather than for the kids who actually needed it. Now it was for everybody. And,
Right.
And those are those unintended consequences that the toxic empathy people, they have all these great ideas, but how it actually rolls out is a different thing. And, that's that's the problem, is a lot of these
Well, and
ideas.
I would argue that the intention wasn't good to begin with. When you follow the trails, the rabbit trails, you'll find out that the original agenda was to get to this point where every child is traumatized due to the events of 2020. And because every child is traumatized, everyone needs mental health care. And mental health care is created at this point to be social justice. But that's not what most schools are seeing yet. And it's not what so it becomes shocking. But when you actually go down and look at their own sources, that's what you find. That the goal here is every single child is traumatized. So every child needs this, what I would call reconditioning.
Yeah, and I've seen that since then. And still, you know, one of the young teachers that we took to the conference, I met with her when we got back, and I said, "What did you think?" And she said, "Yeah, it was really good. I had no idea about SEL because I teach it every day." And so it's just good to speak the truth.
Right.
And yeah, people might not believe you, but 5 or 10 years later, I can look back and go, "Oh, I was duped by that one too."
Right.
And if you know the truth, you should speak it, in my opinion.
I absolutely love that. So I'm in the process right now of building a website that's a teacher resource, specifically for conservative teachers. I'm not going to make any bones about that. The NEA does a very good job of equipping non-conservative teachers. And I'm watching some things that I find alarming, like teachers in my own state of Utah. And I think that's important to say because we are known for being a quote unquote religious state. Um, Teachers saying, not every one of my children is Christian. I need to make sure I'm comforting to all. And when they mean all, when a liberal says all, or when a leftist, I don't want to say liberal because liberal means live and let live. That's not what's going on. When a leftist says all, they mean they want to focus on LGBTQIA children. They
Yes.
fully believe that's a thing, and that's what they mean. So when they mean all, they mean we're going to center around these people and we're going to exclude these people, which is what the teacher did in just saying, well, not all of my children are cisgender Christian. So, um, in building this resource, the things that I want to do, one is I want to give them resources to bills that have passed that they can let their parents know about without being super, aggressive, without saying, "Hey, I'm a conservative," but just saying, like in our state, we have a right of conscience bill. And that means that if something is being taught that is against the child's religious beliefs or a family's religious beliefs, they can get up and walk out of the class and they can say, I'm going to use this bill and I'm not going to stay in this classroom. They have to have an alternative, but a lot of teachers don't know that because teachers are not being told what's available to them. So, what would you find useful? Um, what would you find useful? I know that a lot of people, there was one woman at the conference who said, yes, SEL is bad for these kids, but does anybody think about what it does to us teachers who have to teach things we do not believe, that we fundamentally do not believe, but we have to do it? What does that do for our mental health? What what kind of resources do you feel would be best for teachers in those kind of positions?
Well, I know that the Freedom Foundation is giving legal resources. I think the best thing for teachers in these type of situations, honestly, you can't really put it on a website, is just to be in a group of like-minded teachers so
Yeah.
that whatever you decide to do, you can bounce it off of other like-minded teachers and you can get support. You can weigh all the factors. You can decide if you're going to comply or if you're not going to comply. But honestly, like for teachers, start a group. Like it doesn't have to have a name, doesn't have to be registered with the state. Just find another common sense or conservative teacher, because I can agree with common sense teachers on a lot of things. And like you said about Tim Pool, like he used to be far left and now they call him far right just because he's got common sense.
Right.
So the word conservative scares a lot of people away, but there's plenty of common sense teachers who are just like, what is happening? I'm not even political. I wouldn't call myself conservative or liberal, but what's happening? And so I just really recommend that teachers find another person, and then that person can find another person, and all of a sudden you've got a chat. And that's why I think TFA started from the Freedom Foundation, was to give teachers a group. And so in my district, we run things past each other. And like Katie, who presented about our discipline policies. Okay, what about this, Katie? What do you think about this? And so we can run things by each other and we can share information as well. But like if you know that in Colorado, you have to call someone by their preferred pronoun. Well, I can let you know that, but also like I can say, but I'm not gonna do that. You know what I mean? Like to me, you're harming someone's mental health if you go along with this thing they're saying. And so I think laws are good because people don't understand them, even if they're bad laws. You know what I mean? But also just are you doing this just for your state only?
Well, so what not really. What I'm trying to do, one of the things that I want to do is allow kind of a place where teachers can write. They can say, "Oh my gosh, today was a horrible day. I got hit in the face, or this child swore at me this many times. Went to the principal's office, came back with chips and a sticker." Without having to say who they are. They can mark what grade level they were in and maybe what district, but nothing else, so that they're protected. But they can then vent, because what's happening, there was a teacher or a staff member at a school who videotaped, who phone recorded 3 kids who had a slingshot and they were aiming it at another kid. And the school employee said, "I'm recording this anonymously because we know that everything that we post on social media is tracked and we can be fired." And so what I'd like to do, I think the big thing is as you were saying from the beginning, we're waiting for parents to stand up. Well, parents aren't going to stand up other than the, handful that we have. Parents aren't going to stand up if they don't believe it's happening. So we need to hear the stories of it happening on a pretty regular basis so that we know, oh, these are teachers that we can get behind. One of the things that I would love to do, we're building that school district ambassadors. And unfortunately, the left has done that at the state board level. That person has, there is an alliance person who will tell the parents the correct way to address the teachers, but they're already on the left. So that doesn't really help. What we're doing is we are equipping parents to understand policies like restorative justice, what SEL really looks like in the classroom, all of these kind of things, so that when something happens, they have someone in their community who they can call, "Why is this happening?" And we can tell them specifically, "This is why, here's the links, let us direct you." But we want to do the same thing for teachers, because there's teachers who don't understand the depth. Maybe they haven't read Why Meadow Died. They don't understand the depth of what restorative justice policies can do and are doing in our schools. They don't understand what mental health counselors in schools under Michelle Obama were taught to be social justice change makers. They don't know those things because on that surface level, they just know, man, we're wasting a lot of time talking about feelings and our kids can't read. So I'm trying to build the connection. Anybody can write and say, this happened in my school. We just want parents to know it's happening. And,
That's good.
we're David up against Goliath here, because for every post that we find, some some NEA teachers union person is going, I just don't know why we try so hard. And every time we turn around, parents are just after us. And it's just so hard because all we're trying to do is do what we're experts at. And they do that. See, I understand performative because it's what I do. So I understand what they're doing. They're manipulating people. And it helps if we've got the stories from teachers, and then it lets us help them as well. I want to be the people who, when a teacher says, I'm having a horrible day, suddenly I can tell somebody in another district, even another state, the teacher's having a horrible day. Can you send someone to go do a Starbucks order for them? How can we uplift? How can we build up teachers and build the connection when the NEA is working so hard to break the relationship and to make good teachers mistrust our effort?
That's great. What I tell teachers who are thinking about quitting or retiring, I mean, they're quitting or retiring anyway. I'm like, no, don't quit. Don't retire. Stay. Like, if you're already ready to leave anyway, why don't you just make it an adventure? How long can I stay? Like,
Yeah,
I don't, it's just, um, I really want to empower teachers to just be strong. If you're going to look back on your life in 20 years, how are you going to look at yourself? As somebody who quit, as somebody who escaped? I'd rather look back on myself and say, no, I stood strong. I stood tall. I said the truth. Maybe one kid, one place was inspired. And maybe long after I'm dead, that kid will grow up and speak the truth someday when it needs to be spoken. And that's why we're teachers. We want to impact a life. And I wanted to add, I was fortunate enough, I didn't know anything about restorative justice. I just knew everything was going to hell in a handbasket in education as far as discipline was. And I was fortunate enough to go to an education conference 4 years ago where Max Eden actually spoke. And so maybe I can send it to you, but you can add a link.
I would love
And
it.
it's Max Eden speaking on restorative justice. And that was the first time I understood what was happening. And then also, the teachers wear red for ed on Wednesdays, and I go to board meetings. And even if you just go wear a shirt around town, but if I could send you the link to this shirt, which is Red for Real Ed, Not My Teachers Union, I think teachers can start wearing it, out to dinner or something, and start the conversation and start finding your voice. Maybe not in your school district, just practice talking about it and saying, these union candidates, they're not my candidates. I'm not in the teachers union. I'm not voting for these candidates. And so I think that's just the big thing, is teachers have to start speaking up whenever and wherever you feel comfortable. Just take a little tiny step, and each step gets a little bit easier. And I love it. I think that teachers, like, I wouldn't care if there was a camera in my classroom. I wish there were cameras in the hallway.
Right.
If teachers were wearing GoPros, and people could see the behavior that is being allowed, I think things would change. And so
Agreed.
I'm not fearful of transparency. And, so whatever you can do to get the word out, I agree, because even some good board members don't know what's actually happening in the school districts that they're they're on the board for, because most people don't call up a board member and tell them what's going on.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I wrote down a note and then I saw something else. But courage is absolutely contagious. Every single time a teacher says something, in my head, I think, well, there's one of our heroes. We need heroes. Our kids need heroes. I just want to, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I'm also reminded of the girl in Scotland who recently said, who's going to stand up for me? I've heard multiple kids say, as kids know something is wrong, who is going to stand up for us? And I've also heard teachers, I've been in meetings where in the next room, educators or even just company officials, people have went around the room and said their pronouns. You are swallowing the emperor's new clothes. You're swallowing ideas that are basically a measure of how will you comply. And the thing is we have the freedom still, who knows for how long, but we have the freedom still to tell the truth. We have the freedom to raise kids towards what I would call the light. I would call enlightenment. We have the freedom to take kids from quote unquote marginalized communities and to change their outcomes. It will not change if all they do is think about that they are victims, if all they do is think about what oppresses them. That won't change anything. But if a kid can come into school and have kind of that buckle up, buttercup kind of attitude, if they can sit there and instead of thinking about the terrible thing that happened, mommy or daddy yelled at me today, and instead they can sit there and achieve something great, it changes. You can have a bad moment, or you can have a bad day, or you can have a bad life. SEL says, let's focus on that. It's never going to change, so let's teach you how to cope with it. But how to cope with it is not to focus on it. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Is there anything else that you want to get across? And I will ask you to please send me the links to the Max Eden and also to your t-shirt. But is there anything else you want to hit before we finish?
I just like to say to teachers, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? And I'm not going to be used by anybody to enforce totalitarianism or victimhood. And I remember a story, must have been like in a Mao prison camp, that they would offer the prisoner some type of reward if they would just write a letter home stating, the Maoist viewpoint. Mm-hmm. They would offer you some great reward if you would do that. Because once you did that, they knew that would start changing your brain into accepting that as the truth. And that's another reason I won't comply.
I love it.
Live not by life. Yes. And so I'm not going to comply. It's not worth my integrity. It's not worth my job. I'll find another job. I wasn't born, no Christian is born to be a coward. And so I just don't understand it. Like, yeah, I face fear regularly. It's not like I don't, and I give myself a pep talk, or I call someone who gives me a pep talk. And I had a friend who's passed away since, but he would never give me any sympathy whenever I called him, even crying. And one time I said, Henry, could you just give me sympathy one time? And he's like, Stacy, would that help? Would that help you? And I was like, all right, I guess not. So I think that's where we need a group of teachers, of like-minded teachers, to go through all of this with, And it's not just about whining and complaining, but it's about spurring one another on to having courage and doing the right thing. And, that's what we need. And I think that's why TFA, Teacher Freedom Alliance, people can join it. And, we're having these yearly conferences. And then we're also going to be doing local events and Zoom events. And I have the great honor of being on the leadership cabinet for this organization. And people can join Teacher Freedom Alliance. They can apply. If you're accepted, you can get $2 million worth of liability insurance for free. There's no cost to join this organization. This is an organization to give teachers community, to give teachers resources, to give teachers support in the battle that we face so that all the good teachers don't leave. That's the thing is like, I talked to a teacher recently and she was like, I wish I would have known about this before I left, and maybe they'll come back. But a lot of good teachers left because of how horrible it is. And, I would like to invite them to come back, but everybody who's like-minded should join the Teacher Freedom Alliance. Just look it up on the internet.
Thank you. Are the behaviors worse now? Are they, or are they being exploited? Are they worse than they were before? Can a teacher who has common sense still control the classroom, or is it just as bad?
That's a good question because, we used to, in my district, we used to all be trained in love and logic, which was natural consequences to the student. That the teacher doesn't work harder than the student. If a student misbehaves, maybe you say, I'm really sorry you made that choice. I'm going to think about it and I'll let you know your consequence tomorrow. Okay. And it taught teachers how to use love and logic to maintain their classroom. That was ousted when restorative justice came in because consequences are now racist and punitive. And so there's also another organization that my friend is a trainer for, and it's called the Kid Whisperer. And the Kid Whisperer has a blog. And so my district is still not training teachers in classroom management, which infuriates me because I meet these young teachers. And is behavior bad? Yeah, behavior is bad, but I don't really have any problem. I have small groups, so that's another issue entirely. But I refer a lot of these teachers, I either give them my old Love and Logic CDs or I refer them to the Kid Whisperer blog because the Kid Whisperer is currently doing trainings around the country to help teachers.
Fantastic.
Learn how to manage their classroom. And I hope to get them at the next TFA conference.
I would love to talk to them too, if you know them and have an in there because, I'd love it for my own class.
Every time I see them post on Facebook, I'm just so jealous that, and so I'm actually considering, I don't know how it'll go. I have a lot of crazy ideas here and there, but like just doing a GoFundMe to raise the money.
To bring them out.
To do it myself. Okay. If the school district won't train us in classroom behavior, all right. How many people might donate? I need $12,000 for a 3-day training. And teachers don't have money. Like they can't each pay, $200 or whatever.
Right.
And so that's one of my crazy ideas I'm considering right now because, and Kid Whisperer is, I kind of call it Love and Logic 2.0. Love and Logic kind of went underground during COVID. And so that's why I'm not pushing them as much because I see that the Kid Whisperer is doing trainings all around the country and being accepted, and teachers and districts are excited about it. And I've been trying for about 3 years to get them in my district, and I have failed. So I'm just pretty much to the point where I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah, Colorado has very much changed in a lifetime. Very, very much.
Yes.
It's insane what's going on there. And I think that Utah is not far behind if we can't write this track. So, well, Stacy, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I've really, really enjoyed it. So please keep in
thank
touch.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Yep. Thank you. If you have any ideas for parents and that parents can support teachers without swallowing the lies, I'm very interested in them. So, and if any of your other teachers have ideas on what we can do, but there's no way that I'm going to stop doing what I do so that people's feelings are not hurt. Sorry, kids matter more. So,
exactly. Ditto. Thank you.
Yes. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. I'll send you those links.
Sounds great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay.